Hello, welcome to the Thriving Monthly Trend Report. This is going to be for March 2026. So here are the three main themes that I noticed this month, which I organized the articles that I came across through social listening under. And before getting into each one, I'll note that there's a few clear ideas that stood out from the articles that I went through and synthesized. And that is thriving together doesn't happen by accident. It happens when stewards come together intentionally to create spaces and places that promote belonging and trust, and also when systems and infrastructure are redesigned so that more people can take part in and benefit from the future ahead. All right. So, jumping into this first theme of shared stewardship leads to civic infrastructure, this first theme really captures the stories of those building the social, relational, and organizational infrastructure that makes communities more capable of solving problems together. These articles tell us that civic life and civic muscle are built through repeated opportunities for participation, shared learning, and connection. So the first article about how North Central Washington Food Council held its first inaugural meeting is a good example of how shared stewardship builds civic infrastructure, as NCW brought together multiple partners in the region to address food access and food security in order to strengthen the local food system across North Central Washington. So this article also talked about how they use the vital conditions framework specifically to move from a fragmented approach or response in order to build a more durable system for food access across the region. So this story really shows how food security is, more than a one-off service issue, and that it's a systems issue that really does require this infrastructure to be built through collaboration, coordination, shared responsibility, and of course, long-term planning. This Interact for Health Rural Community Connection article is about an event that was held for the first time to bring people together across a rural region that covers parts of Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, and to strengthen relationships in this region in a way that hasn't really existed there before. So this article is less about like a single program and more about the function of creating the kinds of spaces that allow for community life and civic life to deepen in ways that people can connect and learn and build trust and feel rooted and a part of something larger, in order to steward resources and solve problems together. This Methodist Healthcare Ministries article, one of our partners we've worked with before. This article also speaks to this theme, as it was really centered on a strategy to strengthen a set of community coalitions across Texas so that they can advance equity more effectively over time. The emphasis here is really on supporting these local groups and building momentum and deepening the capacity that's needed for sustainable change. So, what stands out is this is not just like funding individual projects, it's about helping local groups build shared stewardship through the capacity, trust, and infrastructure that is needed to create change. Up next, I saw several articles that touched on the role of public education in creating and supporting thriving communities. The Success of Rising Together story here is about South Carolina's Richland One School District. And it reflected an approach to education where progress really depends on the educators, the families, and the systems all moving in the same direction. So this story also did highlight the vital conditions and the interconnectedness between vital conditions by positioning public school systems as community hubs that support workforce development, can reduce crime, and improve public health. The article also confronted the district's legacy of segregation and the ongoing reality of how to build a shared future in which people come from different histories and work towards thriving together, taking that into account. At the center of this work was the superintendent's Vision 2030 plan, which really underscored that student outcomes only change when the adults who are at the helm, when they change and when their perspectives and vision changes, and how these institutions, these public schools, play an undeniable role in community health outcomes. The Civic Education, Civil Society, and Americanism article speaks to this theme as well as past themes around democratic life that we've seen before. So this is like recurring. This article discussed the role that civic education plays in shaping participation and responsibility and civil society, and how civic learning is one of the ways societies like reproduce the habits and norms that make democratic life possible. This piece really emphasized how public systems are not just, service delivery mechanisms. They also shape the capacities that people end up bringing into community life. And so in that sense, civic education is a part of the infrastructure that supports long-term opportunity and stability in both local communities and democratic life at large. Um, Several articles in March spoke to placemaking, which is, the collaborative, community-driven process that reimagines public spaces to maximize shared value and strengthen the connection between people and their environments. So this theme is about like creating healthy, inclusive, vibrant communities by focusing on local assets and culture and social interaction. So many stories from March show how places become more meaningful when communities can use them to gather or heal or create shared identity. Again, a theme that we've seen many times in past report outs. So, and also as noted in past report outs, this is one of these stories focuses on Atlanta, where a lot of this work with art has been happening and is continue to happen by utilizing the arts to create connection and belonging. So the Thriving Together Atlanta article talked about how they're transforming an old Fourth Ward site into an open air art gallery. They're turning a former medical campus into a public-facing space for art and reflection and neighborhood connection. We've seen similar stories about this happening in New York City as well in the past couple of months. The open air gallery is important not only because of art itself, but because of what it makes possible in the public realm. This like visibility and interaction and shared experience being reflected and showing how place can be used to create belonging and expand the social connection in a neighborhood. This What's Ahead at TLA article is about the Texas Library Association's annual conference that is focused on thriving together, and just underscores the role that libraries also play in community life and learning and connection. Libraries are more than information hubs. They are third spaces and public institutions that support access and trust and civic connection, and they're one of the public systems that can help expand opportunity and support thriving over time. And this group, this Texas Library Association, continues to come up in their usage of thriving together in their framing of their work and the conferences that they've been holding. Lastly, this article about a listening session in Montana that surfaced Native healthcare needs and, more importantly, created a space for voices to be heard and included. So the heart of the story is not just about like health policy. It's the relational and institutional question of whether, people are being recognized and respected and included in creating belonging, and, especially in a context shaped by trust and historical inequity. So really, this article really emphasized how thriving depends on more than access to services. It depends on whether people are feeling seen and heard, and that we have the spaces and places where they can be heard and also take part in the decisions that are going to affect their lives and futures. So across these stories, a common thread has emerged, and that's communities thrive when people have the space and voice and structures to shape what is coming next, whether that's through placemaking, civic life and infrastructure, or system change. The work is really about building conditions where shared progress can take root and last. We see food councils, libraries, coalitions, and public space activations are being used not to just deliver services, but to rebuild trust and increase agency and strengthen the social fabric that makes long-term well-being possible. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again next month.